The final, flickering candle in this long night of history reveals the one truth they buried deepest. The Dark Ages were not an accident. They were not a decline. They were a beta test, a controlled demolition of public knowledge, a deliberate campaign to make a population dependent, fearful, and ignorant, all for the benefit of a ruling few. The church and nobility perfected a playbook of information control that you still hold in your hands today. It's invisible ink bleeding through the screen you're watching. He's a man whose wealth is measured in the sweat of others, his soft hands a testament to his authority. The local lord is with him, his armor polished, but his face a mask of pinched concern. They don't see a miracle of engineering. They see a threat. They watch the trip hammer work, its relentless power a silent mockery of the feudal order. Their entire world, their power, is built on a simple, brutal equation. They own the land, and you must work it or forge for them to survive. Your subservience is their currency. You write about the monthly blood, not as a curse from God, but as a natural, healthy cycle. You write about difficult births and how to turn a baby in the womb to save both mother and child. You write about remedies for the pain that male physicians dismiss as feminine hysteria, the work of demons. They bleed women to balance their humors. You prescribe willow bark and rest. They pray. You operate. This is the knowledge they fear. And then you hear a guard's voice, clear as a bell in the night air. He says the name of the baron, the man who owns this land, the man who has been trying to evict your family for 2 years to expand his pastures. And in that one horrifying moment of clarity, you understand everything. This was never about the sickness. The plague was just the perfect excuse. They didn't just let you die. They are making sure of it. The real disease isn't the fever in your child's body. The goal is not to discover what you believe. It is to define you, to paint you as an enemy, to achieve your social and literal annihilation. By controlling the definition of truth, they control everything. The Inquisitor pushes a quill into your hand. Its feather is stark white against your dirt-caked skin. Sign, he says, his voice still maddeningly calm. He is not asking. Your eyes fall to the parchment, to the elegant script that details a life of demonic worship you never lived. Just a few years ago, scholars aimed a new kind of light at a prayer book from a German monastery, much like this one. Beneath the pious words, they found a ghost, a lost work by the Greek scientist Archimedes, a mind so brilliant it terrified the church 1,000 years after his death. They found one, but 99% of these erasures are lost forever. Their knowledge now just a phantom ache in the memory of the world. This isn't history. This is a crime scene. It's no different than a modern intelligence agency insisting on a public encryption standard while secretly building in a backdoor only they know how to use. It's a corporation embedding its own proprietary hidden code within an open-source project everyone uses. They build the system for their masters, but they leave a secret way in, a private language for those who know how to listen. You feel a sudden urge to break away from the tour, from the droning voice and the passive crowd. It maps the bloodlines, the apprentices, the secret societies that carried the truth into the next generation. A fragile chain of human trust stretching across the abyss of history. And as the final piece clicks into place, a cold dread washes over you, colder than the stone beneath your feet. The map doesn't just show you where the knowledge is, It shows you who is still alive to protect it. And now, it shows them you. You watch it, a metallic taste of fear mixing with the wonder in your throat. This changes everything. This could free you. Free every smith from the tyranny of the forge, from the slow destruction of their own bodies. But 99% of people, including you until that moment, believe the world is as God made it, fixed, eternal, powered by muscle and prayer. They don't know that a handful of monks, scribbling on vellum in the dead of night, have just rendered 1,000 years of labor obsolete. Today, the Guildmaster arrives because what you are writing down is knowledge so powerful, so threatening to the established order, that they will perform an act of intellectual butchery to silence you. They won't burn you. They will simply steal your name. They will give your genius to your husband, to your colleagues, to men who lived centuries after you were dust. You dip your quill. The scratch on the parchment is the only sound, a dry whisper in the sleeping city. You write of the secrets of women. De secretis mulierum. They are under orders, but their orders are not to contain the plague. Their orders are to contain you. Later, when the moon is a cold silver coin in a crack in the shutters, you hear a wagon. It's not the death cart. The wheels are too heavy, the horse's steps too sure. It stops outside the merchant's house. You press your ear to the door, the wood cold and damp against your skin. You can hear the ASMR quality scrape of a heavy crate being dragged, the muffled thanks. These confessions, extracted under the promise of pain, were often pre-written, filled with lurid details of black magic that were pure fantasy, designed to horrify the public and justify the verdict. The true heresy wasn't worshiping a different god. The true heresy was owning the wrong piece of land, knowing the wrong secret, being in the way of the wrong man. 99% of the people who burned, who were broken on the rack, who had their tongues torn out, were not heretics. They were just inconvenient. This is the medieval version of a state-run media channel broadcasting a forced confession. A diagram of the heavens becomes a meaningless smudge. An argument for reason flakes away, atom by atom, under the patient pressure of your hand. 99% of people believe the monks painstakingly preserved the knowledge of the ancient world. The truth is, they were the great filter. They were not libraries. They were giant censorship machines, erasing any thought that dared to question the one absolute truth. For every book they copied, 100 like this were scraped clean, their souls scoured from the skin to make way for a hymn. This is the great secret of the palimpsest. New LiDAR scans, laser technology that can measure a building with divine precision, have been aimed at the heart of cathedrals like Chartres. What they revealed has been quietly suppressed by mainstream historians. The scans show geometric ratios, astronomical alignments, and mathematical constants embedded in the architecture that have absolutely nothing to do with Christian theology. They are sacred, but not to the God of this place. These masons were forced to build for the church, their genius conscripted by the greatest power in the world. But they hid their own truth in plain sight. Your hand trembles as you smooth out the final corner of the heretic's note. His words are no longer a frantic prayer. They are instructions, a key to the final layer of the cipher. The symbol on the tooth, the geometry in the stone, the stars in the sky. They don't just connect knowledge, they connect people. The map isn't just a network of information. It's a census, a hidden directory of who inherited the knowledge, who carried the flame. A massive water wheel, wider than a cart, turned with the patient, unstoppable force of the current. Inside, a series of wooden cams on a rotating shaft lifted and dropped a colossal iron-headed hammer onto an anvil. Clang, clang, clang. The sound isn't just loud, it's perfect. Each strike lands with the same force, in the same spot, tirelessly. It can flatten a bloom of raw iron in the time it takes you to wipe the sweat from your eyes. It does the work of 10 men. It never asks for bread, wages, or rest. Your fingers are stained with it, a dark iron gall black that won't wash out. Before you lies a sheet of vellum, impossibly expensive, more valuable than the finest silk, and on it you are committing heresy. Not with prayers to a pagan god or by questioning the divinity of Christ. Your crime is far more intimate, far more dangerous. You are drawing the inside of a woman. You are mapping the womb. Your name is Trotula, and 99% of people for the next 800 years will believe you never existed, or if you did, that you were a man. They are using the chaos of God's pestilence to do their own dirty work, to cleanse the board of pieces they no longer wanted. The troublemakers, the indebted, the inconveniently alive. Your youngest child begins to cough. It's a wet, guttural sound that makes your own lungs ache in sympathy. You pound on the door, your knuckles splitting against the rough grain of the wood. You scream until your throat is raw. You beg for a doctor, for water, for a priest, for anyone. The only response is the bored shuffle of the guard's feet on the cobblestones outside. The inquisitor leans forward, his breath a foul mix of wine and decay. He tells you what your neighbor confessed you did. He describes satanic rituals, orgies in the woods, the sacrifice of unbaptized infants. It's a script. Newly translated trial records from this time reveal a shocking truth that historians have tried to downplay for centuries. Over 80% of accusations against entire groups like the Cathars were based on standardized, fabricated confessions. It is pride, distilled into ink. Purify it. Make it holy again. So you work. Your tool isn't a quill, but a rough little block of pumice. You hold the page taut, the vellum cool and almost greasy under your fingertips, still smelling faintly of the calf it came from. And then you begin the scraping. Scrape, scrape. The sound is a dry whisper in the echoing silence, the sound of a voice being strangled. You watch the black ink of the Greek philosopher turn to a fine, gray dust. But 99% of the people who walk these floors will never feel the secret that hums just beneath the surface. They see a church. The initiated see a library of forbidden knowledge. Because the master masons, the anonymous geniuses who spent their lives shaping this stone, were heirs to something much older than the cross. They were keepers of a secret flame, a lineage of knowledge stretching back through the Knights Templar, back to the Pythagorean mystery schools, back to the sun-drenched geometry of the Egyptian pyramids. It's the same desperate human impulse that builds secret networks today, the timeless struggle to keep truth alive when power demands it die. This wasn't a conspiracy against the people, it was a conspiracy for them. A centuries-long desperate struggle to cup a single hand around the last candle flame in a hurricane of ignorance. The weight of it presses down on you, the sheer audacious bravery of it. These weren't just rebels. They were librarians of a scattered Alexandria, using symbols and secrets as their catalog. For 20 years, you've performed the same violent ritual. Heat the iron until it weeps light. Hammer it into submission. Quench its fire with a scream of steam. It's a craft that breaks men, leaving them deaf, stooped, and scarred. But now there is the monster. Last week, Brother Thomas, a monk with ink-stained fingers and eyes that see the world in gears and levers, led you to their new workshop by the river. You expected another forge, perhaps a larger bellows. You were not prepared for this. The most successful lie isn't a story that is told. It's a story that is erased, a ghost in the library of history, a voice you can't quite hear, a name scraped away from the page until only a faint indentation remains. You are sitting in a cold stone room in Salerno, in the year of our Lord, 1160. The flame of the tallow candle shivers, throwing your shadow, huge and distorted, against a wall of drying herbs. The air is thick with the scent of yarrow, chamomile, and ink. They show death tolls in the wealthy merchant quarters that are suspiciously low, while in the poor districts, the rebellious districts, the numbers are not just high, they are absolute, a culling. This is the plague's man-made secret. Quarantine was not a shield, it was a weapon. It was the medieval equivalent of gerrymandering public health, of deciding who gets the ventilator and who is left to suffocate. The red cross on your door is not a warning. It is a verdict, delivered not by God, but by the reeve and the baron. It's a flicker of confirmation. This is the secret they would kill to protect. This isn't about God. This is the world's first state-sponsored disinformation campaign. What they don't want you to know is that the great heresy trials were almost never about genuine religious belief. They were a tool, a weapon to eliminate political rivals, to seize land and wealth, to terrorize an entire population into silent obedience. The metallic taste of fear coats your tongue. You realize the questions are not meant to find truth. They are a labyrinth with only one exit: confession. It is filled with diagrams that make your head spin. Spheres within spheres, charting the silent dance of the stars with a precision that feels like blasphemy. It shows the inside of a human body, arteries and organs mapped like a strange, forbidden country. It speaks of atoms, of logic, of a universe that does not need a prime mover to function. It is the most beautiful and terrifying thing you have ever touched. Your orders from the abbot were clear, his voice as smooth and hard as a river stone. This knowledge is a sickness, Brother Michael. You crane your neck, tracing the lines of the soaring vaults as they meet in the gloom, a man-made forest of stone climbing toward a distant, silent heaven. The light, fractured into a kaleidoscope of holy blues and blood reds by the stained glass, paints shivering pictures on the floor. The guide, a man with a voice as dry as dust, tells you this was all for the glory of God, a testament to unwavering faith. And you believe him. You're supposed to. The hedge witch's herbal cures were not superstition. They were pharmacology. The formulas encoded in the same geometry the mason used. The alchemist's transmutations were not about turning lead to gold. They were a coded language for metallurgical advancements the church had deemed demonic. Every heretic burned at the stake was a server being taken offline. Every banned book was a piece of the network's memory being wiped. This feels impossibly modern, doesn't it? A decentralized, encrypted network designed to share forbidden information under the nose of a tyrannical, centralized authority. The monster by the river doesn't sleep. It doesn't eat. It doesn't breathe. But you feel its heartbeat in the soles of your worn leather shoes. A deep, rhythmic thump, 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 that echoes from the Cistercian abbey a mile down the valley. You stand at the door of your smithy, the air thick with the ghosts of 1,000 coal fires. Your arms, knotted with muscle from a lifetime of swinging a hammer, ache in the damp morning air. A sanitized historical narrative, hiding a crime so monstrous it had to be disguised as an act of God. There were no divine visions. There was only the clinking of coins, the creak of a ship's hull, and the quiet weeping of children who realized too late that the sea would not be parting for them. It's the hurried footsteps of guards, the clink of glass vials, and a low, reassuring murmur. Help! They are getting help. It's a secret whispered only in the darkest corners of history. A truth so disturbing it has been deliberately buried. 99% of people believe the Black Death was a great and terrible equalizer, a scythe that cut down lord and serf alike. They are wrong. The plague was real, a horrifying force of nature. But the response was a masterpiece of human cruelty. Unearthed parish records from forgotten archives in Italy and England tell a story the chronicles ignore. Did you converse with the goat before it soured the milk? Did you attend the Sabbat on the hill? And did you kiss the devil's posterior as a sign of fealty? You deny it, of course. Your voice trembles. You try to explain. You talk about your faith, your prayers, your belief in God. But your words are smoke. He is not listening. You mention the land dispute with your neighbor, the one who looks at your small field with hungry eyes. You see a flicker of understanding in the inquisitor's gaze, but it's not for you. This one feels profane. The air is a thick cocktail of beeswax, ink, and something else. The faint, sweet, sick smell of decay, a ghost of rot that the incense from the chapel can never quite conquer. It's the smell of things being forgotten. In your hands, it feels alive. A manuscript from the fallen East, from Byzantium, its vellum pages thin and impossibly smooth. It's not a psalter. It's not the life of a saint. The church built the cathedrals to touch God, but what they don't want you to know is that the masons who built them were praying to a different power entirely. One encoded in the very stone you now stand upon. The cold air inside is a physical thing, a presence that clings to your skin and fills your lungs. It smells of damp stone, melting beeswax, and the faint, sweet ghost of 1,000 years of incense. Your footsteps, soft as they are, echo into an impossible vastness above. You overlay that chart onto the Templar's map, and your breath catches in your throat. The cities aren't cities, they are nodes. The rivers aren't rivers, they are the pathways of communication. This is the secret that changed everything. What 99% of people, even now, will never learn is that the Codex of Whispers was never a physical object. A book can be burned, a library can be sacked, but an idea, distributed across 1,000 minds, that is harder to kill. The Codex was a living network, a conspiracy of light against a manufactured darkness. You've just found a single, terrifying breadcrumb, and the path it leads down is guarded by ghosts who will do anything to keep their secrets buried. The innocence of children wasn't a weapon for God. It was the perfect cover story. It's the same cynical logic used today by corporations that build labyrinthine supply chains and shell companies to hide the fact that their products are made by the small, tired hands of children in a country you'll never visit. They sell you a clean story, a polished brand, while the ugly truth remains a dirty secret thousands of miles away. The Children's Crusade was the medieval version of this. God isn't the one doing this. Men are. You hear everything through the wood of your prison. The rumble of the death cart, the collector's hollow cry, "Bring out your dead." You hear the weeping. You hear the silence that follows. But you also hear other things. You hear the cough from the weaver's cottage next door, a dry, rattling sound. It's followed by more hammering, more shouts, another door sealed. But then, you hear a different cough, a softer one, from down the lane, from the wool merchant's grand house, and the sound that follows is not a hammer. Your wife's scream is swallowed by the darkness. You're dragged into a stone room, damp and smelling of old fear and cold earth. There is a table, 2 chairs, and a single candle that gutters and spits, making the shadows on the wall dance like frantic demons. A man sits opposite you. He doesn't look like a monster. He looks like a clerk, a bureaucrat of the soul. His voice is calm, almost gentle, and that is the most terrifying thing about him. He slides a parchment across the table. He begins the questions. They make no sense. They told you monasteries were the beacons of light in a dark age. What they don't want you to know is that for every candle they lit, they extinguished a sun. You are a brother of this holy order, but tonight you are not a scribe. You are an executioner of ideas. The chill of the scriptorium seeps through your wool robe, a damp cold that lives in the stone itself. It's a different cold from the crypt below your feet, where the bodies of your brothers slowly return to the earth. That is a holy cold. But as you look at the hope you now hold, you have to ask, what other choice is there when the official system simply wants you to accept death? You clutch the bundle of herbs to your chest, its earthy scent a prayer the church would never answer. But as you step back into the suffocating darkness of the woods, a twig snaps behind you. It's not an animal, and you realize the priest's eyes are not the only ones that watch in the night. What they don't want you to know is that isolation was the illusion. It was the camouflage. You pick up the cast of the tooth. Your fingernail traces the faint, sharp lines of the symbol, a sound like a mouse scratching in the walls. It's not a mark. It's a key, a cipher. You hold it over the mason's rubbing, and the cathedral's geometry suddenly shifts, becoming not a floor plan, but a star chart. The lines connect unseen constellations, points of light that a skeptical monk in a distant scriptorium recorded, risking the pyre for charting God's true heavens. You've seen it before, carved into the lintel of a forgotten church, etched onto the hilt of a dead man's sword. It's the mark, the sign that this book, this entire vault, is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. A secret, scattered library they called the Codex of Whispers. They knew a purge was coming. They knew no single fortress could protect their treasure. So they broke it apart, hiding nodes of knowledge across Christendom, creating a web of secrets that could never be entirely destroyed. You haven't found the treasure. There are almost no reliable contemporary accounts of this crusade as a popular, spontaneous movement. The story you know was solidified, romanticized, and sanitized hundreds of years later. The few terrifying records that do exist from the time mention 2 merchants by name, Hugh the Iron and William of Posquares. They weren't shepherds of a holy flock. They were predators. They gathered thousands of children with promises of miracles, packed them onto ships, and sailed not to the Holy Land, but to the slave markets of Tunisia. Outside, a man with a bucket sloshes something wet against the wood. You hear the drag of a brush. You know what he is painting. A cross. A crude, angry red cross. A ward to keep the healthy out, and a tombstone to mark the dead within. From the street, the priest shouts that this is God's will, a divine reckoning for the sins of man. You are meant to accept it, to pray, to die quietly. But as days bleed into a week, a terrible, blasphemous thought begins to fester in your mind. More potent than the sickness itself. The most dangerous thing in the medieval world isn't a sword. It isn't the Black Death. It's a quiet knock on your door in the dead of night. A sound that splits your life into a before and an after. The wood splinters under the force of a fist. It's not thieves, it's something far worse. They are the Inquisitors, the men of God, their faces lost in the shadows of their cowls. Their presence sucks the warmth from your small hovel, leaving a chill that has nothing to do with the night air. You are being taken. His eyes meet yours for a fraction of a second. There is no pity in them. There is only a shared, secret knowledge, a fear. This grain isn't just being hoarded. It's going somewhere. It's for someone else. And the symbol on the cart feels less like a mark of ownership and more like a warning. The beast in your stomach is silent now, replaced by a new, colder question. Who are they truly feeding, while you are left here to starve? She listens to you, her head tilted, and her fingernails make a soft scraping sound against the rough wood of her table as she gathers dried leaves, roots, and a small, tightly wrapped cloth. She tells you how to make the tea, how to apply the poultice. Her voice is low, calm, a stark contrast to the priest's booming pronouncements. As you take the bundle from her gnarled hands, you know the truth this transaction holds could get you both burned. A rubbing taken from a cathedral pillar, the same symbol hidden within the stonework, disguised as a mason's mark. A page torn from a heretic's journal, the ink faded, the words a frantic prayer to a god of reason. And the map, the Templars' map, its coastlines warped, its cities misplaced, utterly useless for navigation. Until now. Your heart pounds a frantic rhythm against your ribs, a drumbeat of revelation. You've stared at these pieces for months, for years, seeing only disconnected acts of defiance. A lone witch, a rebellious monk, a proud mason, a knight with a secret. 99% of people still don't know that the largest book burning in history wasn't in Nazi Germany. It was the quiet, systematic destruction of Templar knowledge. You reach for the largest codex, a heavy tome bound in dark red leather. The knowledge within it could rewrite the stars, but it's something on the outside that makes your blood run cold. Tooled into the leather on the spine, almost hidden in the ornate design, is a familiar symbol, a serpent eating its own tail. But inside the circle, a single, stylized raven's feather. You ignore the metallic taste of fear in your mouth as you accept the single, heavy coin they press into your palm. It's not payment, they assure you. It's a token for your own needs, for your faith. The last thing you see is your child's small hand disappearing into the larger, well-manicured hand of a stranger. You never see them again. This is the story 99% of people believe. A heartbreaking tale of naive faith gone wrong. A children's crusade that simply failed. But the truth is infinitely darker. The nails are the loudest sound you have ever heard. Each hammer blow is a heartbeat, a final punctuation mark on the story of your life. From inside, you watch the slivers of light from the outside world vanish, one by one, as rough-hewn planks are hammered across your door. The air, already thick with the sweet, sickly smell of fever, grows heavy, trapped. Your world shrinks to these 4 stone walls, the packed dirt floor, and the terrified breathing of your family in the gloom. This is it. This the moment the world ends. The question is no longer how to get clean, but how to stay alive. He is watching. He is waiting. He is winning. As the last card in the procession lumbers past, your eyes catch something strange. On the canvas cover, hastily painted, is a symbol you have never seen before. It is not your Lord's crest of the snarling boar. It is not the cross of the church. It is something else. A black serpent eating its own tail, but with a single, unblinking eye in the center of the circle. One of the guards glances back, not at your hovel, but down the road, as if checking for witnesses. It's the exact same playbook used today to discredit inexpensive, natural remedies in favor of patented, highly profitable pharmaceuticals. The hedge witch wasn't a devil worshiper. She was a threat to a medical monopoly. Her hut is a dark shape against the slightly less dark woods. Smoke curls from a hole in the thatched roof, carrying the scent of strange herbs that makes your head swim. She opens the door before you knock, her eyes ancient in a face lined like a winter apple. There is no incantation, no demonic pact. For centuries, they have searched for a single book bound in leather and secrets. They are all looking in the wrong place. The truth was never meant to be held in one hand. The candle gutters, and your shadow writhes on the cold stone, a distorted twin born of fear and firelight. Before you, the fragments lie scattered on the rough-hewn table. They are the ghosts of 1,000 whispers, a plaster cast of a dead man's tooth, a strange symbol etched into the enamel. It's the modern equivalent of a whistleblower's server farm, a data cache that could bring down an empire. The power here isn't monetary. It's the power to undo centuries of intellectual control, to tell the world that God wasn't the only one with answers. They had to be silenced. The books had to be burned. The men who guarded them had to be erased from history, their names turned to ash and accusations of devil worship. What they don't want you to know, what history has tried to forget, is the cold calculation behind their eyes. This isn't a holy mission. It's a business proposal. They promise food for the journey. They promise passage on a great ship. They promise your child a place in a story that will be sung by angels. You feel a seed of faith, but it's tangled in the thorny roots of desperation. Your child will eat. Your child will be saved, one way or another. So, you agree. You push down the cold dread that crawls up your spine. You were meant to answer it. And you know, with a dread that settles deep in your bones, that the price of this knowledge is about to be demanded in full. He is selling tickets to heaven, paid for with the bread from our tables. The statement hangs in the air, a drop of poison in the clean water. This is the real heresy, not lust, but truth. This is the secret being whispered in the steam just before the doors are bolted shut. The priest by the wall makes a subtle mark on a wax tablet hidden in his sleeve. He is not condemning sin, he is gathering names. You feel a sudden chill despite the heat of the water. You watch the cart recede into the gray mist, a phantom of plenty in a world of want. Your father, a man who was once strong enough to pull a plow by himself, coughs a wet, rattling sound from the corner. It is the sound of lungs filling with fluid. It is the sound of the end. You feel a rage so pure and so cold, it burns through the hunger. A rage against God for the rain, yes, but a deeper, blacker rage for the man in the castle. God may be indifferent, but your Lord is not. They recreated a single recipe from a 1,000-year-old Anglo-Saxon medical text, a simple balm of garlic, onion, wine, and cow bile. They tested it on the 21st century plague, the antibiotic-resistant superbug MRSA. The ancient potion didn't just slow it down, it annihilated it. This is the wisdom the church sought to eradicate. They couldn't control it. They couldn't tax it. They couldn't build a cathedral on a foundation of herbs you could pick yourself. So they demonized it. They made the healer a heretic, ensuring that all salvation for the body and the soul flowed only through them. The real monster doesn't have claws and fangs. It carries a ledger book, a royal seal, and a key to a dungeon. And while you're staring into the woods, it is standing right behind you. Here are the secrets of algebra, of architecture that reaches for the sky without collapsing, of medicine that can tell the difference between a fever and a poisoning. This is why they were destroyed. King Philip of France didn't orchestrate the dawn raid on Friday the 13th for their money. That was the excuse. He came for this. This collection of secrets was a direct threat to the one institution that held a total monopoly on truth. The Vatican. In a world controlled by faith, a library of facts is the most dangerous weapon imaginable. They speak of a boy, a shepherd who has had visions from God. They speak of a new crusade, not of swords and soldiers, but of the pure of heart. An army of children, they say, will march to the Holy Land, and their innocence alone will be enough to peacefully convert the Saracens. The Mediterranean Sea itself will part for them, just as the Red Sea parted for Moses. You look at your child, whose biggest journey has been to the well and back, and you look at these men, the shape you saw tattooed on the flesh of the heretic before they burned him. The one you glimpsed carved behind a gargoyle's leer high on the cathedral wall. The symbol from the hidden tooth, the one drawn in the margins of the forbidden manuscript. It signifies the most dangerous truth of all, a secret so vast it could shatter the foundations of this world. And seeing it here, on a common pail, in a common alley, doesn't feel like a discovery. It feels like a summons. You were not meant to just find it. You break the places where they can gather and realize they are not alone in their fears or their frustrations. By making you physically dirty, they also make you socially disconnected, isolated in your own small world, your own information bubble. A man, a stranger with a scholar's soft hands, drifts closer to you in the swirling mist. His voice is barely a whisper, lost to any ear but yours. They say the bishop is selling indulgences for sins not yet committed, he murmurs, his eyes scanning the room. It is the 2008 financial crisis, when bankers sold predatory loans to people they knew would fail, just so they could seize their homes. It's the corporation that knowingly pollutes a town's water supply, then appears as a savior to sell them clean, bottled water at a premium. The powerful don't just capitalize on chaos. They create the chaos and then sell the solution. The bad weather was just a cover story, the perfect piece of medieval propaganda to mask a deliberate, man-made slaughter, and it worked. They didn't have a name for the salicylic acid in the willow bark tea she gives for fever and pain, but they knew it worked. We call it aspirin. They didn't know the science behind the moldy bread poultices they placed on infected wounds, a primitive but powerful form of penicillin. but they saw men with gashed legs walk again instead of succumbing to rot. This wasn't superstition, it was science, observed and passed down through generations. In 2011, modern scientists at the University of Nottingham decided to test this forbidden knowledge. You bolt the door, the sound of the heavy wood echoing your surrender. You tell yourself it's for safety, to protect your family from the imagined creature in the dark. But as you huddle by the dying embers of your fire, a far more terrifying question begins to form. They put a monster in your head so you would never dare to leave your home, so you would never meet, never organize, never question. The real question is this: while you are locked inside, trembling at shadows, what are they doing out there in the darkness you're so afraid of? Here, in your hands, is knowledge that is considered heresy in Europe. You unroll a scroll. It's a star chart, but not one blessed by Rome. It uses numbers that don't officially exist, a symbol for zero, a concept of nothingness that the church declares demonic. You open a book, its pages a soft, delicate vellum. It details surgical procedures, the cleaning of wounds, the setting of bones, with a precision that your local barber surgeon, with his bloody rags and prayers, would call witchcraft. You can count the ribs beneath their thin tunic. At night, you hear the wet sound of their cough, a sound that promises a grave before the next harvest. You pray to a God who feels silent, distant, maybe even cruel. Then they arrive. Two men on horses that look better fed than any person you've seen in a year. Their clothes are dark wool, clean, without a single patch. They don't look like priests, but their words are slick with piety. They call themselves merchants, but they aren't here to trade grain. They are here to trade in hope. It's the fear of what you are a part of. There, leaning against the damp stone wall, is a simple wooden water pail. It looks like any other, discarded and forgotten. But you were told to look. Your hand, trembling slightly, reaches down and turns it over. And your breath catches in your throat. It feels like swallowing ice, scratched crudely into the underside. Hidden from all the world is the symbol, not the swift for safety or the knot for danger. It is the master key. You can hear the hiss of the steam on hot stones, an ancient cleansing sound now being twisted into the sound of temptation. Tax records will one day show it, a slow, methodical execution. Across Europe, hundreds of these public sanctuaries are taxed into oblivion, regulated out of existence, or shut down by decree. It's a tactic that power will rediscover centuries later. When you want to control a people, you don't just burn their books, you close their libraries. You don't just silence their protests, you defund their public squares. They show powerful abbots and calculating lords holding back their stores, speculating, waiting for the price to peak, waiting for you to become so desperate you will trade the deed to your family's land, land your ancestors have worked for 200 years, for a single sack of flour. They are not just profiting from the disaster, they are engineering it. The history books call it a famine. For the men in the castles, it was a harvest of a different kind. This isn't some dusty, forgotten horror. It is the blueprint. You are breaking God's law and man's law. But deep in your gut, a more ancient law screams for you to act. A mother's law. 99% of people today, and even then, have no idea that this so-called witchcraft was a war on knowledge. What they don't want you to know is that these women were often the last remnants of a sophisticated medical tradition, a lineage of healing stretching back to Roman and Celtic herbalism. Stories of beasts snatching people from the roads become rampant just before a new curfew is imposed. They aren't saving your soul, they are managing their assets, you. This isn't just some dusty, forgotten history. It's the same shadow play that echoes through our own time. The stoking of fear against an invisible other. The constant warnings of imminent threats and foreign agitators used to justify more control, more surveillance, more restrictions on your freedom. They paint a monster on the horizon to keep you from ever looking down at the chains on your own feet. So you stay inside. Your heart is pounding, expecting the glint of treasure. But your candle flame illuminates only the dull bone white of rolled parchment and the dark, cracked leather of bound books. A library. The disappointment is a physical blow. Until you understand. This is the real treasure. During their 2 centuries in the Holy Land, the Templars did more than fight. They listened. They learned. They absorbed. In the markets of Acre and the libraries of Jerusalem, they sat with Islamic mathematicians and Jewish physicians. They traded prayers for proofs, scripture for science, and they brought it all back. The story they told you about the children is a lie. They wrapped one of the largest human trafficking operations in history in the innocence of faith. And for 800 years, the world believed it. The air in your hut is thick with the smell of dust and quiet desperation. It's 12:12, and the famine has scraped your village clean. You listen to the gnawing emptiness in your own stomach, a dull ache that is nothing compared to the sharp, twisting pain you feel watching your child. You see the hollows in their cheeks, the pale transparency of their skin, to stare blankly when the priest preaches of damnation, all while reading the urgent message scratched into the pew in front of you. They think they have you trapped in a cage of poverty and fear. But their cage is covered in messages they cannot decipher. It is a prison whose walls talk. And as you finally reach the quiet alley behind the bakers, the smell of stale bread and charcoal dust filling your lungs, your skin crawls with a new kind of terror. It's not the fear of the steward. You notice a man at the edge of the pools, fully clothed, a priest. He doesn't look at you, but you feel his gaze. He is not here to bathe. He is here to watch, to listen. He is an agent of the new morality, the one that whispers that your very body is a vessel of sin. The church has begun to declare these places dens of debauchery. They say cleanliness inspires lust, that nakedness invites demonic influence. To them, you are already a ghost. This is the great secret, the one they will never write in their chronicles. 99% of people will learn that the Great Famine of 1315 was caused by bad weather, a simple, blameless act of God. They won't learn about the sealed ledgers hidden in monasteries and castle counting houses, the ones modern historians have finally unearthed. Those pages don't speak of bad weather. They speak of opportunity. They show records of granaries, full to bursting. They track the price of a bushel of wheat as it doubles, then triples, then quadruples. The ways before the cross. You pull your thin wool shawl tighter, the rough-spun fabric scratching your neck. To seek her out is a sin. To be seen with her is a death sentence. But what is the alternative? To kneel and pray while your sun's light flickers out? The forest floor is cold and damp under your thin leather shoes, sucking at your soles with every step. The moon is a sliver of bone behind a shroud of cloud. The air smells of wet moss, decaying leaves. And something else, the sharp, metallic tang of your own fear. What they don't want you to know is that this monster was born in a ledger book, not in the depths of hell. 99% of people believe folklore is just a collection of quaint, harmless superstitions. They never learn that it was often the most sophisticated weapon of psychological warfare ever devised. It's state-sponsored terror, delivered from the pulpit. Church records, the ones hidden away, gathering dust, reveal a shocking pattern. Terrifying sermons about local demons and vengeful spirits spike in the weeks right before a new tax is levied. The lid is sealed with hardened pitch, a black, ugly scar. You pry at the edge with your dagger, but the blade snaps. So you use your hands. Your fingernails dig into the gritty seal, scraping, tearing. The sound is rough and loud in the crushing silence, an ASMR trigger of pure desperation. It's the sound of a grave being opened. Finally, with a groan of stone and a final sickening crack, the seal breaks. A puff of stale, musty air escapes, a ghost sigh from a lost century. You heave the heavy lid aside. As you stare into its cold, silent radiance, an ice-water dread washes over you, far colder than the stone floor. You have just proven that man can create light without prayer, without God, and for that, they will burn you. A floorboard creaks on the tavern floor directly above. Footsteps, heavy ones. They stop. They're listening. Did they come for the fool chasing gold, or for the man who stole the light? What the church and the nobles will never understand is that literacy is not confined to ink and vellum. You cannot read their Latin, their language of law and God, but you can read the soul of your village in the bend of a branch, in the color of a ribbon, in the placement of a rake against the wall. They took your voice, so you learned to speak with your hands, with stones, with silence. The greatest trick you ever learned was to look ignorant. It's the only place where information flows as freely as the water, a place where a farmer's complaint about a new tax can reach the ears of a man who can read, who can then connect it to a similar complaint from the next town over. Ideas are exchanged here. Doubts are whispered. Community is forged in the steam. And that is why it has to be destroyed. 99% of people will never learn that the end of public bathing wasn't a slow decline into ignorance. It was a deliberate, systematic campaign of social engineering. It is the sound of the Lord's grain carts rumbling past on the track a stone's throw from your hovel. You crawl to the opening, your knees sinking into the cold ooze, and you peer out. The cart is covered in oiled canvas, but it is piled high. You know it. You can almost smell it. The dusty, life-giving scent of wheat, of oats, of survival. The oxen strain, their hooves churning the world into a brown soup. And the guards, well-fed and cloaked in thick wool, walk alongside, their faces impassive. They don't look at your hovel. They never look. You look at your child, his skin pale and clammy under the flickering tallow light. And you know that prayers are not enough. This is when the whispers start, not from demons in the fog, but from the desperate corners of your own mind. The stories you've heard from other women at the well, spoken in hushed tones when the men are out of earshot. Stories of the cunning woman, the hedge witch who lives deep in the woods, where the authority of the parish bell fades into the rustle of leaves. They say she knows the old ways. His eyes, burning with holy fire, seem to look directly at you. He said it hunts after sundown. He said it's drawn to the scent of discontent. Your hand falls from the door. A cold knot tightens in your gut. Is that the wind rattling the thatch? Or is it the dry, scraping sound of a claw on stone? The fear is a physical thing, a metallic taste on your tongue. They have planted a seed of terror in your mind, and it has grown into a suffocating forest you can never escape. The silence is absolute, broken only by the frantic drumming in your ears and the wet, rhythmic drip, drip of water seeping through 1,000 tons of French soil above you. This is a Templar preceptory, a place of power, but its vault is a void, an insult, a lie, until you see it. Tucked into an alcove, half buried in the dirt floor, is a long, narrow box, not of wood, but of stone. You drop to your knees. The mud is cold and slick, soaking through the rough wool of your trousers. There are no locks, not a stronger metal, something that feels closer to touching the face of God. You mix the powders, the stench of sulfur sharp in your nostrils. You heat the vile concoction, your hand steady despite the tremor in your soul. A vapor collects in the flask's neck, then cools into a waxy, pale solid. You extinguish the candle. In the absolute, suffocating darkness of the cellar, it begins to glow. A faint, ethereal, impossible light. Phosphorus. You haven't created gold. You have bottled a captured star. A miracle. You feel the grit and splinters under your nail, a tiny secret pain. It's a message for whoever comes after you. The patrol passed an hour ago. The road west is clear. This is how you breathe in a world that wants to suffocate you. It's the same way people will one day use whispers in crowded rooms or coded messages in plain sight to speak truths too dangerous for open air. It is the oldest magic of the oppressed, to make the visible invisible. The great equalizer isn't death, it's water. Laughter erupts from a corner where apprentices splash each other. Near the steam vents, two merchants argue good-naturedly over the price of Flemish wool. Their voices a low hum that blends with the gentle lapping of the water against stone. This is more than a bath. It is the heart of your town. Yours is a knot of screaming muscle, a clawing beast inside you that has begun to eat you from within. You are 14 years old, and you have forgotten the feeling of a full belly. You have forgotten the taste of bread. Listen, beyond the ceaseless drumming of the rain, you hear it, a sound that makes the beast in your gut go still. It's the thick, wet squelch of heavy wheels turning in mud, the groan of wood, and the jangling of harnesses. The air in your one-room wattle and daub hut is thick with the smell of stale sweat, damp earth, and the smoke from a dying fire that does nothing to fight the bone-deep chill. The priest was here an hour ago. He smelled of incense and self-righteousness. He anointed your son's forehead with holy water, his lips moving in a Latin prayer you don't understand, and told you it was God's will. His words felt as hollow as a rotted log. God's will feels a lot like abandonment, a hushed conversation with other men who feel the Lord's new tax tightening around their necks like a hangman's noose. Freedom for just a few hours. You reach for the door, your fingers brushing against the rough, splintered wood. And then you freeze. The priest's voice slithers into your mind, as vivid as it was in the church this morning. He spoke of the griever, the long-limbed man, the thing that waits in the woods. He described its pale, wet skin, its fingers like sharpened branches, and the sound it makes when it cracks open a child's bones, a sound like popping acorns. The air down here is cold enough to steal your breath. It's a dead, ancient cold that has settled deep into the stone, a cold that smells of damp earth and forgotten time. You hold your candle higher, and the flame sputters, a tiny orange heart beating against an oppressive darkness. Your shadow leaps against the curved walls of the vault, a monstrous, dancing giant. There are no chests overflowing with coins, no jewel-encrusted swords mounted on the walls. They cannot allow independent, unregulated scientific discovery to happen in 1,000 hidden cellars. So they paint you as a fool. It is a timeless strategy. When you cannot attack the message, you destroy the messenger. Label the visionary a heretic, the innovator a madman, the scientist a quack. It works just as effectively from the village pulpit in your time as it does on a glowing screen in a future you will never see. They don't fear your failure. They fear your success. And tonight, you are close to a success that terrifies even you. Not an antiseptic, 10 feet away, the steward spits into the dirt, his gaze sweeping over you, past you, through you. He is looking for dissent, for the spark of rebellion in a gesture or a word. He will never find it, because it is not in a word. It is carved into the doorpost of the next cottage over. A swift, a bird that never rests. This is a safe house, food and shelter for those on the run. Your fingernail drifts, as if by accident, against the rough-hewn wood of a fence post, tracing a circle with a cross inside. The cold misery of the street, the stench of animal waste and wood smoke, dissolves in a cloud of swirling steam. Your world for the next hour is tile and water and echoing voices. You lower your body into the bath, the heat a blissful shock, and you can feel the grime and the tension of a week's labor simply melting from your skin. Around you, bodies of all shapes and social standing bob in the heated water. A baker, a stonemason, a clerk who works for a minor lord. Here, stripped of wool and leather, you are all just people. It drips through the rotting thatch of your hut, each drop a tiny mocking clock tick counting down the seconds of your life. The floor is no longer earth. It is a slick, foul-smelling mud that sucks at your bare feet. You huddle with your family in the gloom, the only light a sliver of weak gray from the doorway. The air is thick with the sweet, sickly stench of rot and the metallic tang of fear. Your stomach is not empty. An empty stomach is a simple problem. The cure for some of our most terrifying modern superbugs wasn't discovered in a sterile, billion-dollar lab. It was written in a 10th century book of potions the church tried to burn, a secret they buried under the ashes of women they called witches. The only sound in your world is the one you wish you could unhear. It's the breath of your child, a wet, rattling noise like stones shifting in a muddy riverbed. Each exhale is a struggle, a tiny battle fought in a body racked with fever. The monster under your bed isn't real, but the one they just put inside your head, that one is designed to kill your courage. The air in your hovel is thick with the smell of damp earth and stale smoke. Your stomach makes a low, guttural growl, a hollow sound that echoes the emptiness of your grain sack. Outside, the moon is a splinter of bone in the black sky, and the forest beyond your village whispers promises of what you desperately need. a handful of silver for the extra hides you tanned in secret. Forget the gold. The story they fed you about gleaming chalices and the Ark of the Covenant is a beautiful, dazzling lie. It's the shiny object they wave to distract your eyes, to keep you from looking in the one place that truly mattered. Because 99% of the world still believes the Knights Templar were guardians of relics. But what they don't want you to know, the secret that got them burned, is that their real treasure couldn't be weighed or melted down. It was something far more valuable and infinitely more dangerous. You are trying to create a distilled antiseptic that could save a child from a festering wound. You are studying how iron, fed with the black dust of charcoal and Star of Devere, can be reborn as a steel harder than any knight has ever wielded. The famous Philosopher's Stone isn't a thing you can hold. It's a metaphor for a unified body of knowledge, a theory of everything that could unravel the world that the Church and the Crown have so carefully stitched together with dogma and fear. 99% of historians look at the carvings on your tools, the patterns in your fields, the knots in your ropes, and they call it folk art. They call it superstition. They are wrong. It is a lexicon of survival. It is the silent scream of the powerless, turned into a hidden scripture written on the very world that enslaves you. You keep walking, the mud sucking at your worn leather turnshoes with a wet, sloppy sound. Your heart hammers a steady, frightened rhythm against your ribs, a drumbeat only you can hear. The most powerful weapon ever used against the common person wasn't a sword. It was the loss of soap. You've been told to picture your ancestors as filthy, mud-caked, and ignorant, the unwashed masses. But this image is a carefully constructed lie, a ghost story told to reinforce a narrative of progress. What they don't want you to know is that for a time, you were clean. And it was then you were most dangerous. You push open the heavy wooden door, and a wall of wet heat embraces you. The history books tell you that a famine is an absence of rain, an absence of sun, an absence of food. But they are wrong. A famine is a presence. It is the suffocating presence of a power you cannot see, a hand that closes around your throat from miles away, from behind stone walls you will never enter. The rain has not stopped for 2 years. It's not a cleansing rain, but a cold, gray, endless weeping from the sky. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. And you realize the most terrifying truth of all. The Dark Ages weren't an accident. They were a carefully managed prison. You have given women more than just medicine. You have given them the truth about themselves. And in a world built on the foundation of female inferiority, the truth is not a candle. It is a wildfire, and they are coming for you, not with torches and pitchforks, but with something far more permanent, the quiet, methodical scrape of a knife on parchment, erasing your name until you are nothing but a ghost, a whisper, a question mark in a history written by your thieves. What they don't want anyone to know is that the pursuit of gold was the perfect cover story, a mask of simple avarice to hide a terrifying ambition. 99% of people, now and for centuries to come, will believe the legend. But you know the truth. The true goal of the magnum opus isn't wealth, it's knowledge. You are not a sorcerer. You are the world's first true chemist. As you carefully distill the acrid liquid, you aren't trying to mimic the sun's glitter. He doesn't see the way you notice the single strip of red cloth woven into the laundry line of the weaver's cottage. He is in a foul mood today. Offer honeyed words, not complaints. He doesn't see the 3 small flat stones stacked neatly beside the community well, a slight deviation from the usual chaotic pile. The water is tainted again. Boil before drinking. This is the secret that changed everything for your people. As the slow, heavy tread of the abbot's sandals begins to echo down the long, dark hall, a terrifying realization freezes the blood in your veins. You were not the first person sent to silence this page, and the secret it holds is not the one you were ordered to destroy. And if they hid this, their very signature, in the darkest corner of their enemy's temple, what other messages did they hide in the light? What other truths are encoded in the patterns of the glass, the angle of the sun, the very proportions of the space you're standing in? The symbol on the stone feels like a key you have just stumbled upon, and you realize with a dawning horror and thrill that this entire cathedral is not a prayer. It's a lockbox. The question is, what does it open? The lie of the stupid peasant is the same lie used today when institutions dismiss the public as an uneducated mob, incapable of understanding complex truths. This peasant wasn't just a farmer. He was a guardian of a secret so profound, its revelation threatened to bring the entire medieval world crashing down. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. They control the narrative through centralized institutions. Then it was the pulpit, whose Latin you couldn't understand. Now it's the algorithm, whose code you'll never see. You have been taught a history designed not to enlighten you, but to pacify you. The great lie isn't that they lied about the past. The great lie is that they ever stopped. They lied about 1,000 years of darkness. What else are they lying about now? He looks determined. He slips a rolled-up parchment, a sketch, like the ones by the master engineer Villard de Honnecourt you've heard whispered about, behind a loose stone in the wall of the scriptorium. They've killed the machine, but they haven't killed the idea. You walk back to your forge, the familiar weight of your own hammer feeling heavier than ever. You now carry a secret far more dangerous than any forbidden text. The future was here, and they murdered it. The silence from the abbey is deafening, a void where progress used to be. Women who understood botany, chemistry, and medicine in ways that terrified the patriarchy. Because your knowledge didn't just threaten their pride, it threatened their control. If a woman understands her own body, she holds the keys to fertility. To life and death, she is no longer a passive vessel for a man's lineage. She is an agent of her own destiny. That was a power the church and the men who ran the world could never permit. You trace the outline of your drawing, the fallopian tubes, the ovaries, the cervix, a map to a hidden country. The story they tell in the sunlit world above is a useful lie. The image of the crazed old man in a pointed hat, boiling lead and squandering his fortune. It's a perfect caricature, a piece of propaganda designed to make you an object of ridicule, not terror. Because what you are doing down here, in the flickering candlelight, is infinitely more dangerous than making gold. You are making sense of the world. The Lord's steward is watching you from the edge of the field, but what he doesn't know, what they never know, is that you are watching too. Not him. You are watching the world he cannot see. You are reading a language he is blind to. Your eyes scan the path ahead, your body bent in a posture of weary submission, a performance you have perfected over a lifetime. He sees a peasant, head bowed, trudging home after a day of back-breaking labor. Your breath catches in your throat, a sharp, painful gasp. The pumice stone falls from your numb fingers, clattering on the stone floor. It's the same symbol, the exact same one you saw carved into the bottom of the old well, just before they sealed it with blessed stone. The same one you saw tattooed on the wrist of the heretic they burned in the town square last spring. It is not part of the Greek text you have just erased. It was put there after they were at the very heart of power, building the monuments of their oppressors and turning them into monuments of their own survival. The church believed these cathedrals sanctified their absolute authority over the souls of humankind. But for those who knew where to look, they were silent, towering acts of rebellion. This symbol proves it. It connects the lowest peasant to the highest craftsman in a conspiracy of belief that operated in the shadows of the cross. You can almost feel the chill of the soil, the scent of decay and wet clay as the archaeologist's brush reveals the carving. It feels ancient, forbidden. The church and the nobility needed you to believe the common person was an animal, incapable of complex thought. Why? Because an intelligent populace is a populace that cannot be controlled. This is the great secret. They buried the truth of widespread literacy, of advanced agricultural science, of sophisticated social networks for one reason: power. The Templars weren't just bankers. They were smugglers of this forbidden data. The witches weren't devil worshippers. They were the frontline medics in a war on knowledge, their remedies a threat to a system that profited from sickness and despair. Listen, can you hear the echo? The playbook is identical. They manufacture monsters to create fear and justify control. Then it was heretics and demons. Now it's terrorists and conspiracy theorists. They discredit and ridicule inconvenient science that threatens a profit motive. When it threatens to liberate the common man, it is heresy. It is a monster to be slain. You watch as the Lord's men arrive with pry bars and axes. You hear the wet, splintering crack of the oak axle shaft. The sound is more violent than any sword strike, because it's not just wood they are breaking. It's a future. The great hammer falls silent, its iron head resting on the anvil like a decapitated giant. The river flows on, its power now wasted, turning nothing. As they leave, you catch the eye of Brother Thomas. He doesn't look defeated. This cannot have come from a woman. It is impossible. And so, with a simple, deliberate stroke of his own quill, he assigns your masterpiece, On the Diseases of Women, to a man. The lie is complete. Your voice is gone. You lean back, the rough wood of the chair pressing into your spine. You can feel the cold seeping up from the flagstones through the thin leather of your shoes. This is the secret they don't want anyone to know. The Middle Ages had female intellectual giants. They don't fear the alchemist who fails to make gold. They fear the one who discovers a truth they cannot control. You are that alchemist. The stone walls of your cellar press in, damp against your back, smelling of wet earth and generations of secrets. The only sound is the quiet, hungry hiss of the flame licking the belly of a glass vial. Your shadow, a looming giant, capers on the wall behind you, a silent accomplice to your crime. Your heart thumps a nervous rhythm against your ribs, a drumbeat not of greed, but of forbidden hope. It's a weapon you've just handed them, and they will now use it to dismantle your entire world. You are destroying a universe to make room for a prayer. The words of the philosopher are almost gone now, just a faint gray stain on the page. But as the candlelight flickers, your eye catches something else. In the corner of the page, where the last sentence of a dangerous idea once lived, a symbol is becoming visible. It's fainter than the erased text, a ghost of a ghost, etched so deeply into the vellum that your scraping has only revealed it. It's a circle with a single, sharp line cutting through its center. Your heart hammers against your ribs. The symbol is crude, ancient, and devastatingly familiar. It's the same geometric star, the same secret mark that was etched into the peasant's tooth, the one they found in the grave by the woods. A chill, entirely separate from the cold of the stone, spiders down your spine. This is not a random mark. This is a signature, a key, a quiet, defiant scream across 800 years. They were here. This secret lineage, this hidden family of knowledge, wasn't just hiding in the mouths of dead peasants. Your town blames goats for the coughing sickness that took your sister. Welcome to the official Middle Ages. But what they don't want you to know is that this world is a carefully constructed prison. Recently, in a forgotten field in England, archaeologists uncovered a mass grave from the 14th century. And in that cold, damp earth, they found a peasant's skeleton with something impossible etched onto a molar. A complex geometric symbol, a swirl of intersecting lines that has no place in a peasant's mouth. What they don't want you to know is that 99% of what we call history is the most successful and long-running disinformation campaign ever created. The Codex of Whispers wasn't just a myth. It was the symbol for everything they tried to burn. Decentralized knowledge, effective folk medicine, and truths that empowered the common person instead of glorifying the king. That peasant with the strange symbol etched into his tooth, he wasn't just a farmer. He was a librarian in this invisible network, his own body a vessel for the key. This machine mints a new coin, one they don't control. The guild master turns to the abbot. His voice is quiet, but it carries the weight of a dropped portcullis. This contraption, it is an affront to the dignity of honest labor. The Lord adds, it puts ideas in men's heads. Idle hands are the devil's workshop. It's the same hollow logic you'll hear centuries later when oil companies allegedly buy and bury patents for engines that run on water. Progress is only permitted when it enriches the powerful. It's a truth that echoes into our own time, into the modern doctor's office, where women's pain is still, to this day, taken less seriously than men's. The systemic bias didn't begin with modern medicine. It was perfected here, in the cold monasteries, where your work would eventually be copied. Imagine the monk, his brow furrowed in concentration. He copies your words, marveling at their clarity, their shocking insight. He has never seen a childbirth. He believes menstruation is a punishment for the sins of Eve. He reads your clinical, compassionate prose, and his world tilts on its axis. It's the cold, calculating logic of the powerful, and you are trapped on the wrong side of their arithmetic. The boards on your door were not put there to keep the plague in. They were put there to make sure you never, ever got out. You look at the dark corners of the room, and you can almost feel the presence of the tools they will use to help you remember. The scratch, scratch, scratch of the quill as you sign is the only sound. It's an ASMR whisper of damnation, the sound of your life being unwritten, and a new monstrous one being authored in its place. You have just confessed. You have just become the monster they needed you to be. And you understand, in a moment of cold, perfect clarity, that this signed lie is now the only truth that matters. It is the medieval version of a government classifying a document as top secret because it proves a war was based on a lie. It's a tech company burying the data that shows its product is harmful. To control the present, you must own the past. And ownership, you are learning, is mostly about deciding what to burn. The sweet rot from the crypt seems to rise through the floorboards, mirroring the death of knowledge in your hands. You feel a wave of nausea, your stomach clenching with a guilt so profound it feels like a physical sickness. You drift away from the light, drawn toward the shadows that pool in the older, darker corners of the transept. The air here is colder still. You run your hand along the wall, your fingertips tracing the cool, rough-hewn stone. The ASMR quality scrape of your fingernails against the grit of centuries-old mortar is the only sound. Here, far from the public eye, behind a pillar carved with a forgotten saint, you see it. Your breath catches in your throat. It's a carving, no bigger than your thumb, deliberately placed in the deep shadows where no bishop's eye would ever fall. The most dangerous lie they ever told you about the Middle Ages isn't about the dragons or the wizards. It's about you. It's the lie that the people who lived then, your ancestors, were ignorant, brutish, and stupid. It's a lie designed to make you feel superior, to hide a terrifying truth. The Dark Ages weren't a period of ignorance. They were a period of manufactured darkness. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in the fog that creeps from the river at dawn.